If there's one thing you can do to know if your overall hormonal balance is in check, it's Hey guys, what's going on? Megan here. The danger of ignoring your hormones. Your hormones are everything. I repeat, everything. They affect how much muscle you put on, how much energy you have, how much motivation and positive aggression you have, how easy or hard it is for you to lose fat, how easy it is for you to recover from your workout. They control your appetite for you guys that find it hard to eat or for you guys that overeat. They affect the calorie in, calorie out balance. They affect your metabolism. They even decide if the genetics you inherited from your parents will be activated in your body or not. So you could have the genetics for something or the genes for something, but if your hormones are shit, you're not going to even transcribe and translate those genes. Or you could have bad genes. You could inherit bad genes from your parents, but if you have the right balance of hormones, you can make up for some of those deficiencies. So don't let anybody tell you that your hormones are not important. Now, why do some influencers and people tell you to ignore your hormones? Number one, because they're fucking retarded. They're brain dead. They have tinfoil hats. They don't know a fucking goddamn thing about the human body. You guys know how much I hate the cesspool that the fitness industry is. Just clowns going around spewing bullshit and repeating what they heard from another expert or read in a freaking article and misinforming generations of people. Anybody that tells you not to do blood work or not to worry about your hormones or your testosterone is full of shit. That's like telling a diabetic patient not to check their blood sugar or telling a person with hypertension not to check their blood pressure. I mean, how stupid can you be to tell a person not to check their blood work or check their hormones? Now, how often should you do blood work or how often should you check your hormones? Because later in the video, I'm going to show you how you could figure this out. You could actually know the state of your hormones without doing blood work, especially for those who can't afford it, because you guys know I'm all about recommending things that can be done for free or at relatively low cost. That's what my whole channel is about. But for those that can't afford it, how often should you check your blood work? I say at least every 3 months. If you could check it every month, do it every month, because in some countries it's as cheap as $10, which is nothing, and obviously in others it's as much as hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So it really depends on your budget, but the more often you could check your blood work, you should check it. And again, when I say blood work, I'm really referring to the state of your hormones. You don't have to do blood work to state that, but I'm going to cover that at the end of the video. Now, why should you check this often? Why do I recommend at least every 3 months or every month? Simple, because your blood work only shows you a snapshot in time. It doesn't show you what your hormones really like on average, right? It just shows you what it looks like, what your hormones look like at the time of the test. And your hormones are always fluctuating. So what really matters about doing freaking blood work is not just to see where you fall in the range, but to see what your hormones look like over time, right? The average changes, the trends in your blood work, the trends in your hormones. And if you don't check your blood work often, it's going to be almost impossible to see a trend. Also, keep in mind, guys, that testosterone levels are down over 50% in the last several years. Do you think that would have happened if men check their blood work or check their hormones periodically? Do you think this would have happened? Do you think men would have went from 800, 900, 1,000 nanogram per deciliter to 300, 400 over the last few years if men had a habit of checking their hormones throughout their lifespan? Fuck no, because they would have noticed the drastic decline and they would have fixed it before it's too late. Because yes, the longer you wait to make changes to your hormones, or the longer you wait to fix the things that are causing your hormones to plummet, the harder it is to reverse the damage. Because once again, remember, your blood work only shows you the state of your body at the time of the test. You could take a test this morning, your testosterone will be, let's say, 500 nanogram per deciliter, and the next day it might be 1,000. Later in the day, it might be 300. A week later, it might be 800. So you can't just say, well, I did blood work 3 years ago, my levels were 800, so I'm fine. No, that's not how the body works. You also can't say, oh no, my testosterone was only 400, something must be wrong. Maybe you slept like shit the day before. Maybe you ate a zinc deficient diet or a diet deficient in other vitamins and minerals. You don't know. So that's why you can't just take one blood work too seriously. You need trends, you need averages. Another important point is to not fall into the fucking TRT trap. Do not fall into this bullshit trap that I see a lot of men fall in, where they do blood work, they see that their testosterone levels or their other hormones are suboptimal, and their first reaction as a bunch of losers is to hop on TRT and to rent their masculinity, right? No, if your blood work is screwed, if your hormones are screwed up, 99.9% of the time, it's not age, it's not luck, it's not genetics, it's you. It's your lifestyle, It's your diet, it's your sleep, your stress management. So fix it. Do not use shit blood work or shit hormones as an excuse to hop on TRT. You're a fucking loser if you do so. I don't respect anybody on TRT that does not fall into the 3 exemptions. You guys know what the 3 exemptions are. That is disease or accident outside of your control, working in the military or police, or being an elite athlete. If you don't fall in any of those 3 categories and you're on TRT or PEDs, you're a bitch, you're a cop-out, you took the easy way out, you are no longer a man because now you're renting your masculinity from a bottle, and you should be ashamed of yourself. All right, now that I have this long-ass disclaimer out of the way, what is the goal of this tier list? Is to narrow this down, right? Once again, using the Pareto principle, right? This list is very long, and keep in mind, I only kept it at 20. There's a lot more hormones, so I might do a part 2. I also didn't include other markers that are not really hormones, so I'm going to cover those in future videos, right? Such as lipids and liver enzymes and, other important markers that are relevant to your health. So this video will focus just on hormones, so that's not too long. Now, the criteria for what makes a hormone goated, the criteria for what's going to make some of these hormones more important than others, even though they all work together as a team, right? Number 1, muscle and strength, because obviously I'm making this tier list for men, right? We're trying to increase our masculinity. We're trying to increase our potential as men. We're trying to maximize our ability to protect, provide, and parent. So clearly, this is geared towards that goal. So number 1, how important is that hormone for muscle and strength, right? And when I mean muscle and strength, I mean anabolism, direct anabolism, right? Because obviously all of these hormones play somewhat of an indirect role in muscle hypertrophy. Number 2, how important is that hormone for maximizing the energy levels? Once again, they all play a role in energy production. Trust me, I know every single hormone in the human body like the back of my hand. They all play a role in energy production, every single one of them. So we're going to focus on the ones that directly contribute to energy production the most. Number 3, how much of a critical role does that hormone play in motivation, aggression, and cognition? Obviously, I mean positive aggression. So that's that desire to conquer, to dominate your goals, right? Because it doesn't matter how much muscle you have, how much strength you have, how much energy you have. If you have no motivation to plow through life, if you have no mental toughness, no positive aggression, you're almost useless. Number 4, how important is that hormone for recovery and immune function, right? Because you could be strong, full of energy, full of motivation, but if you're always sick or if you can't recover from workouts or you're always burnt out, your productivity is going to suffer and it's going to be hard for you to reach your goals. And last but not least, our sexual function, right? Because at the end of the day, it's all about clapping cheeks and passing on our genes. Everything great about you dies if you fail to do so. And no, I don't want to hear about no fucking outliers. But Nikola, these nuts, right? Stop using outliers to prove your point. That defeats the whole purpose. That's what makes them outliers, right? Our goal as men, in general, is to be great, not just on this earth, but in terms of genetic legacy. Gotta pass on your genes. If men stop clapping cheeks today, well, first of all, you wouldn't be here. Your punk ass would not be here if your father didn't clap your mother's cheeks. But if men stop having sex, if men stop passing on their genes, the human race goes extinct in less than 100 years. So I don't want to hear shit. All right, so let's start with cortisol. Number 1, does it affect muscle and strength directly? Absolutely. Obviously in a negative manner. Number 2, does it play a role in how much energy you have? Yes. Does it play a role in your motivation, aggression, and cognition? Yes. For the most part, it's actually a negative modulator of motivation, aggression, and cognition, especially if it's chronically elevated. If it's acutely elevated, it's actually beneficial, but again, I'm gonna keep this video simple. Recovery and immune function. Yes, if your cortisol levels are too high, it really doesn't matter how high your testosterone levels are because they compete for so many functions in the human body. They even compete for DNA binding sites. So that's why it's not all about your testosterone levels, it's about your testosterone to cortisol ratio as well. And last but not least, it absolutely plays a role in sexual function. So knowing your cortisol levels, I'm about to nut category. As I mentioned before, your acute levels don't really mean much. It's your chronic levels, right? So if you have chronically elevated cortisol levels, that's where it becomes a problem. But if it's just acutely elevated because of a workout or stressful time in your life, then that's fine, right? Just find a way to bring it back down quickly. You do not want cortisol levels chronically elevated. Else, it's going to be extremely hard for you to recover. Your immune system is going to be shit. You're going to be sick all the time, and it's going to negate a lot of the effects of your testosterone. Not to mention that the more cortisol you produce, the less testosterone your body automatically makes, as they come from the same precursors, right? Your body uses both cholesterol, pregnenolone, and progesterone to make cortisol and testosterone. And your body makes a lot more cortisol than it makes testosterone. So it gets worse and worse. Right? The average testosterone levels nowadays is around 400 to 500, but the average cortisol levels of a male is usually around 15, right? Anywhere from 10 to 20,000 nanogram per deciliter. So put that in context. Your body can make up to 15 times more cortisol than it makes testosterone. So try not to make that ratio worse. Next, DHEA, dihydroepiandrosterone. This is one of my favorite hormones. It is so underrated. It is so important for so many functions in the body. It affects your muscle mass. It affects your energy levels. It affects your cognition. It affects your recovery. I mean, your insulin sensitivity. I could go on and on. Your sexual function. It's funny how testosterone actually gets a lot of the credit that DHEA is responsible for. Not to mention it's also a precursor for testosterone, right? But DHEA is extremely important for overall male health and optimal performance. So I'm going to put that in I'm about to nut category. And I'm also going to put DHEA sulfate there, right? Because DHEA-S is pretty much your body's way of storing DHEA. Your DHEA levels fluctuate a lot, but your DHEA sulfate levels are a lot more stable, right? So if I had to pick between the two, I would actually put DHEA-S in front, right? Because that gives you a more accurate representation of your body's total DHEA stores, right? Whereas basic DHEA fluctuates so much throughout the day, right? So if you're low on cash and you got to pick one of these two tests, I would pick this one. Next, DHT, dihydrotestosterone. Oh my Lord, one of the most underrated and misunderstood hormones. Once again, because the shit fitness influencers who don't know what the fuck they're talking about. Guys, if I had to choose between having high testosterone or high DHT, I would go for high DHT every single time over. It does every single thing testosterone does, but better. And once again, a lot of the credit that we give to testosterone is actually DHT doing it, right? I could make a whole video on DHT if you guys want because it's such a misunderstood hormone. You do not want to block your DHT. I'd rather lose all of my hair than lose my DHT. That's another sign that masculinity is under attack because now we have normalized blocking DHT, blocking the most androgenic masculine hormone in the human body. Guys, testosterone is not the masculine hormone. It is DHT. DHT is testosterone on steroids. No pun intended. DHT is testosterone super saiyan 1, 2, 3, 4, and that shitty ass blue form. DHT is when testosterone uses Kaioken and Bunkai. DHT protects you against high estrogen levels. DHT is responsible for your sexual function, your erections, your aggression, your motivation, your anxiety levels or lack thereof, your confidence, your energy, your red blood cells, your insulin sensitivity. You wouldn't even have a dick without DHT. People forget that it's not testosterone that gives you a penis when you're forming in the womb. It's DHT. People that have mutations in their ability to synthesize DHT come out with fucking vaginas, even though they're dudes. They're straight niggas, and they come out with vaginas or something in between, even though they have normal levels of baby testosterone and fetal testosterone levels. That's how important DHT is. And during puberty, you can have high testosterone levels, but if your DHT is too low, you actually going to get micropenis. So yes, for you micropenis motherfuckers out there, blame your insufficient DHT levels. In fact, the only way to offset having low DHT levels is if you have extremely high total testosterone and total free testosterone levels, right? Because it takes about 3 to 5 testosterone molecules to equal the effectiveness of just one DHT molecule. And in some cases, DHT is up to 10 times more powerful than testosterone. It binds to the androgen receptor better. It stays on the androgen receptor longer, and it has a high affinity for sex-hormone-binding-globulin, which obviously frees up more testosterone to enter the cells and be converted to even more DHT, right? Also keep in mind that, right, the only downside of testing your DHT levels is it only measures blood DHT levels, serum DHT levels, which is not a total representation of your body's DHT levels, right? Because a lot of your DHT is made inside the cells, right? It's an autocrine and paracrine hormone. So you could have average to low DHT levels in the blood, but you could have very high or very low DHT levels within the cells, depending on your density of 5-alpha reductase enzymes. Now, one criticism of DHT is, oh, DHT is not as important for muscle function because people that don't have DHT can still build muscle. Well, first of all, I'm going to destroy that in a video that I make on DHT if you guys want one. But two reasons why that's false, right? It's half true. Number one, the reason why it's false is simply because the reason why DHT does not lead to higher muscle mass than testosterone in the human body is because of 3-HSD, right? It gets broken down. It gets broken down in the muscle before it gets a chance to do a lot of this work. In fact, your body has evolved that mechanism because DHT is just too powerful. It's too potent at binding to the androgen receptor, so the body had to evolve a way to regulate the amount of DHT within the cell. So that's why 3-alpha HSD breaks down DHT. If DHT was not broken down by 3-HSD, it would be way more anabolic than testosterone. And we know that because certain DHT derivative steroids who do not get broken down by 3-HSD and the other enzymes that break down DHT are just as potent as stimulating hypertrophy and even strength, right? So it's not that DHT sucks at building muscle, it's just it gets broken down by DHT metabolizing enzymes. The second reason why people think that blocking DHT does not affect muscle mass is because they forget that finasteride and dutasteride don't block all of the DHT in your body, right? Obviously, dutasteride blocks a lot more of the 5-AR reductase family than finasteride, but you also have to remember that there's at least 3. There's 5-alpha reductase, 1, 2, and 3, right? And so sometimes some of the people that think that all of the DHT levels are crushed to zero because of DHT blocking drugs, sometimes they have some DHT in certain cells of the body, even muscle cells, that's made by the other enzymes that are not being blocked, right? Because remember, serum DHT levels, blood DHT levels are not equivalent to DHT levels within the body. Not to mention that the body also makes DHT from a backdoor pathway, right? So we can't say for certain that blocking DHT does not negatively affect muscle mass simply because we're not accounting for all of the DHT in the body. But I don't want to make this video about DHT. If you want, guys, I could make a whole video on DHT. It will be like over an hour long because it's one of the most misunderstood and attacked hormone in today's day and age. Do not block your DHT levels. Again, I can't give you medical advice because of legal reasons, but really, between you and me, for educational purposes, most people that tell you to block DHT are clueless about how the body works and they want to castrate you chemically. Now, what about prostate cancer? What about balding? Guys, DHT does not directly cause prostate cancer or balding. That's another myth, right? It plays a role, absolutely. But other factors, including lifestyle, inflammation, even estrogen levels, are responsible for prostate cancer. And again, when it comes to balding, same thing, lifestyle, diet, inflammation, blood flow, so many other factors play a role in balding. DHT is just one of the motherfuckers who's involved in that process, but he's not the one to blame. More often than not, it's your genetics, your lifestyle, your diet. But anyway, DHT goes in I'm about to nut category, and that goes both for total DHT and free DHT. Obviously, unfortunately, it's very expensive to test for DHT and free DHT, but like I said at the end of the video, I'm going to show you guys how you can get it for free. In fact, since we have a lot of things that I'm about to nut category, I'm going to put them in order. So I'm going to put like that. There you go. DHT being more important than DHEA-S, and then cortisol and DHEA. I'm also going to put this one here. Yeah, so I'm going to put them in order. All right, next, estradiol. A lot of people don't know that there's no such hormone as estrogen, right? There's no hormone called estrogen. Estrogen is just a class of hormone, which is estradiol, estrone, estrol. Right? It's almost like testosterone is not called androgen, right? You don't just say, oh, look, I have high androgen, right? Testosterone is a type of androgen, right? It's an androgenic hormone. Just like, again, your androgens include testosterone, DHT, DHEA, androstenedione, right? So we've fallen into the habit of saying estrogen. That's why I like putting an S at the end of estrogen, right? Estrogen is plural, so people know that it's not a hormone, it's a class of hormones, right? So estradiol is the hormone that we mainly refer to when people say estrogen or E2, right? It is the most powerful of the estrogen hormone family. Just like DHT is the king of the androgens. Now, does it play a role in muscle and strength? Yes. Most people don't even know this, right? People think, oh, yeah, again, you just need testosterone and DHT. No, estrogen plays a role in growth hormone and IGF-1 signaling. It plays a role in satellite cell proliferation for my nucleus of a little motherfuckers out there. And in fact, if you watch my videos on ecdysterone, a lot of the benefits of ecdysterone mainly come from activating the estrogen receptor beta, not alpha, beta, the good one, right? Quote unquote good one, right? Obviously, estrogen receptor alpha also has some important functions, but most of the negative, quote unquote negative effects of estrogen come from the alpha receptor, not the beta receptor, right? So the beta receptor is the quote unquote good one. I have to say quote unquote because it's not that simple, right? Every hormone has positive and negative functions. So long story short, estradiol is very important for muscle mass. In fact, one of the reasons why testosterone is so anabolic is because it does convert to estrogen as well. As far as energy levels go, obviously it plays a role in energy levels, but it's not as direct as testosterone, so I'm not going to give it that point. It definitely plays a role in motivation and aggression because estradiol is so important for cognitive function, for neurons, for neuron integrity, for facilitating certain action potentials, on and on. I don't want to go into the nerdy details, but estrogen is so important for cognition and brain function, and obviously even aggression, right? There's a reason why there's a lot of aromatase enzymes in the brain, right? A lot of the effects with testosterone, once again, are really done by estrogen in the brain. Recovery and immune function, absolutely. Estrogen actually increases immune function, whereas testosterone decreases. Again, it's more complex than that, but I have to keep it simple, right? That's the reason why women have more autoimmune issues than men, right? It's because estrogen is a lot more pro-inflammatory. which in some cases is horrible, but in some cases is also good. That's why when you're sick, your testosterone goes down and your estrogen goes up, right? Your body needs to upregulate the immune system, certain functions of the immune system, right? Again, like I say, it's complicated. I can make whole separate videos about the interplay between estrogen and testosterone in the immune system. That's also one of the reasons why women recover faster than men from training, that is. And last but not least, sexual function, absolutely. Once again, this is a scenario where testosterone gets credit for something that estrogen is doing, right? Estradiol is extremely important for sexual function. You don't believe me? Crush your estradiol levels while keeping your testosterone and DHT high, and you're gonna suffer from erectile dysfunction. You might lose your sex drive because, once again, estradiol plays a powerful role not only in the brain, which again, sexual function starts in the brain, and even in your private. So I'm gonna put estradiol at fucking amazing. The only reason why it's not in I'm about to nut category is because it does not affect energy as much as testosterone and DHT do, right? Obviously it does, just not as much. It affects energy, just not as much. I have to repeat that because I'm going to get straw man in the comment section. You also have to remember that if your estrogen levels are too high, that's going to downregulate the production of GnRH and LH, which eventually is going to lead to lower total testosterone levels, right? And so it's going to lead to low DHEA and DHEA-S because they all function downstream of LH. So you do not want your estradiol levels too high. Again, the inverted U curve, I always tell you guys, you don't want estradiol levels too high because it's going to lead to lower testosterone levels and lower DHEA, lower DHT, lower androgen. But you also don't want it too low because now you're going to suffer from brain issues, cognition issues, motivation issues, sex drive issues, erectile dysfunction, recovery issues, and obviously issues with satellite cell proliferation and differentiation. So again, estradiol is extremely important for male health. All right, next, free testosterone. Now, even a beginner should know by now the importance of free testosterone, right? Free testosterone is really what gets to enter the cell and do all of the cool things that testosterone does, right? I can make a separate video on free testosterone if you wish. But for the beginners out there, total testosterone in the body is bound to proteins such as SHBG, sex-hormone-binding-globulin, and albumin, and it cannot enter the cell effectively unless it detaches from those binding proteins. Obviously, it's more tightly bound to SHBG. Once it detaches from those carrier proteins, it's able to enter the cells more easily and convert to either DHT, estradiol, or just activate the androgen receptor by itself, right? So free testosterone is mostly the active portion of testosterone. Now, that doesn't mean that SHBG is useless because it also has another role in the body. For one, it helps transport testosterone, DHT, and estrogen around the body since testosterone is a fat-soluble molecule. But as I've mentioned several times before, SHBG has other functions in the body. It has its own receptor. So that's the one exception to the whole only free T is a bioavailable thing, right? Because total testosterone bound to SHBG can also activate certain receptors in the body, such as the Magellan receptor and all that stuff. But again, I could make a separate video about that. So long story short, free testosterone, if you want to keep things simple, is the quote-unquote testosterone that matters the most, right? That does not mean that total testosterone is useless, right? I could tell you guys, right? You also do not want too much free testosterone because now that's going to lead to too much free testosterone entering the brain, down-regulating LH and GnRH, which is going to ultimately result to having lower Pregnenolone, Progesterone, DHEA, and Estradiol levels, right? So again, inverted U curve. You do not want too much free T. You want it to be high, right? So above 200 picogram per milliliter, which is about 20 nanogram per deciliter, right? Ideally, you want to be above that. The average person is only at around half of that, but you don't want it to be so high that it shuts down total testosterone production. So I'm going to put free testosterone at I'm about to nut category. And the only reason why I'm putting it in front of DHT is because you cannot make DHT without free testosterone, right? It has to right? Testosterone has to first detach from SHBG and albumin before it enters the cell and gets converted to DHT for the most part. Like I said, there are some exceptions, but I got to keep this video simple. Next, FSH, follicle stimulating hormone, which is obviously the hormone that goes to your testicles and allows the production of sperm cells, right? When your body releases GnRH from the hypothalamus, that goes on to the pituitary gland and commands it to release luteinizing hormone and follicle synthesizing hormone. Obviously, we know LH goes and increases the production of testosterone in the cells by increasing the entry of cholesterol into the Leydig cells through a CAMP-PKA dependent pathway. And FSH goes on to focus on sexual function, right? Sperm cells. You cannot pass on your genes without FSH, right? In fact, your balls will shrink without FSH because it enlarges the testicles. Again, I'm keeping it simple here. It's a lot more complicated than this. So number one, does it affect muscle and strength? No. You could have low FSH levels and be strong as fuck. Again, people on steroids have very, very low FSH levels, but they're still strong as fuck, right? And again, the reason why they have low FSH levels is because they're constantly injecting testosterone, the constant increase in testosterone and estradiol and DHT, unless they're taking an estrogen blocker or a DHT inhibitor, which who would, leads to a downregulation of luteinizing hormone and follicle synthesizing hormone, right? So that, in fact, that's how you know a person is on steroids, right? You know a person is on TRT or steroids if they have very, very low LH and FSH levels and very, very high testosterone levels. That's one of the number one, if not one of the best telltale signs, right? So that's why the balls shrink. It's mainly because of the downregulation of FSH. Now, where does it rank? How important it is to test for it? Again, it doesn't directly affect muscle and strength. It doesn't directly affect energy levels. It does not directly affect motivation, aggression, and cognition. It does not directly affect recovery and immune function, but it obviously affects sexual function, right? In case you want to reproduce, that is, right? If you want to pass on your genes, you need FSH. So I'm going to put it at bad, again, only for the sake of this video. That does not mean that FSH is a bad hormone, right? I'm putting it at bad only because of the criteria that we're using for this tier list. We're looking at the whole picture. If this was a tier list for most important hormones for reproduction, obviously it would be in I'm about to nut category. But because we're looking at 5 different factors here, including muscle, energy, motivation, and all that, I'm going to put it bad because it only checks 1 out of 5. So if you're not really worried about reproduction, you can go without knowing your FSH levels, right? So that's the only reason why I'm putting it at bad. Don't go in the comment section and say FSH is not bad. That's not what this tier list is for. Even though I'm putting it at bad, I still recommend you guys to test for your FSH levels because it also shows you if your testicles are responsive to FSH, right? Because if you have testicular damage, even as a natural person, you may have extremely high FSH levels, which is your body telling you that, hey, you know, like the door's not opening, FSH is knocking, and the cells are not responding. So I still think you should test for it. Next, your human growth hormone, which is obviously released from the pituitary gland. Again, the brain is a fucking beast, right? Almost all of your hormones come from the brain. So how is it produced? Again, your hypothalamus releases GHRH, which is growth hormone releasing hormone. Shout out to the guy who named it. He was probably lazy as fuck. And then that goes to your pituitary gland, tells the pituitary gland to release growth hormone, which again goes to the liver and causes the liver to release IGF-1. Growth hormone also goes to other parts of the body and does what it's called for, grow, right? It helps, it facilitates in growth. Now, it's important for muscle and strength, obviously, but not directly. It's indirectly, right? It's mainly through IGF-1 and some of its effects on myostatin and things like that. So it plays a role in muscle growth, but it's mostly indirect. And for the sake of this tier list, things that have too much of an indirect role are not going to be ranked as high. So again, that does not mean that growth hormone is not important. It's extremely important. But as far as what to test for, if you're on a limited budget, I'm not going to rank it as high. But yes, it plays a role in muscle and strength. It obviously plays a role in energy. It plays a role in cognition, but not so much aggression and motivation, right? It's not such a direct effect relative to testosterone, that is, because as I said earlier in the video, all of these play a role in the 5 criteria that I mentioned. It's just some of them are more direct and more potent than others, right? So compared to testosterone, growth hormone does not increase positive aggression and motivation as much. It does, it increases it, just not as much. But it has a lot of effects on memory, alertness, and all that stuff, right? So don't misquote me on this. It also affects recovery and immune function, and again, also sexual function. But again, most of these things are through IGF-1. So I'm going to put growth hormone at fucking amazing. The only reason why it's not higher is because, as I said earlier, most of its effects are indirect. They're through IGF-1, which brings us to the next one. IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor 1, which is produced mainly by the liver, but also by muscle itself, right? So the liver makes IGF-1, and that's the blood IGF-1 levels that you normally detect on tests. But your muscles also produce their own IGF-1, right? Usually called Mechano Growth Factor. And that one is actually more important for anabolism, muscle growth, than systemic IGF-1. But again, gotta keep this video short. I keep forgetting to not nerd out when I talk about these topics. But long story short, IGF-1 is important for muscle and strength, not as much as testosterone, but they work together. So if testosterone is high and IGF-1 is low, you're not going to have enhanced anabolism simply because testosterone mainly plays a role in DNA transcription, whereas most of the mRNA translation in muscle cells is due to IGF-1, right? Through the IGF-1 receptor, because that's upstream of mTOR and P70S6K, right? The whole ribosome genesis cascade. So IGF-1 is important because it works with testosterone to build muscle. It's also important for regulating satellite cells, myonuclei donation. But as I said earlier, that's mainly due to IGF-1 levels inside the muscle cells, made by the muscle cells, not so much systemic IGF-1 levels, which is what most blood tests detect. You also have to keep in mind that IGF-1 counteracts a lot of the negative effects of myostatin, right? They compete with each other for functions in the body. But last but not least, I think one of the most underrated functions of IGF-1 is the fact that it increases DHT levels, right? 5-alpha reductase, which is the enzyme that converts testosterone to DHT, is highly influenced by your IGF-1 levels, right? And DHT also affects sexual function. So long story short, I'm going to put IGF-1 in fucking amazing category. The only reason why it's not higher is because the blood test that you're going to do to measure your IGF-1 levels is only going to show you blood IGF-1 levels. It's not going to show you intracellular IGF-1 levels. Also because a lot of the powerful effects of IGF-1 are useless if your DHT and your testosterone levels are too low, right? So by itself, it's not as potent, and it does not check as many boxes as testosterone and DHT does. That's why I can't put it up there. But it is a fucking amazing hormone. It is extremely important for overall male health. Next, we have insulin, produced by your pancreas. One of the most underrated hormones in the body. It affects muscle and strength because, again, it's what allows you to absorb glucose. It's what allows amino acids to enter the cell. Most people think that insulin only facilitates glucose entry into the cell. No, it also allows you to absorb amino acids, not just glucose. So without insulin, you pretty much die, right? Whereas without testosterone, you can kind of survive, right? Your quality of life is going to be shit, but you can still survive to an extent. Whereas without insulin, you drop dead. So it affects muscle and strength. It affects your energy levels because if you're insulin resistant, then guess what? No glucose is making it into the cells. Amino acids are going to have a hard time entering certain tissues of your body. So you're going to have an issue synthesizing dopamine from tyrosine. You're going to have an issue with noradrenaline levels. I can go on and on, right? So insulin is crucial for energy levels, crucial for muscle and strength, important for motivation and aggression and cognition, important for recovery, and obviously sexual function. In fact, insulin, to be honest, is at the top of everything here because without insulin, your whole body shuts down, right? So I have to put insulin in front of every single hormone here. If you're insulin resistant, you are fucked. Everything goes downhill from there. So you don't want to do blood work and see very high insulin levels, especially if you fasted. All right, next, LH, luteinizing hormone, right? Again, produced by your pituitary gland under the command of the hypothalamus, which releases GnRH, gonadotropin releasing hormone. And as mentioned several times, that's the hormone that goes to your testicles and tells your balls to take in cholesterol and convert it into testosterone in the mitochondria. Right, so without LH, for the most part, because once again, there are exceptions, your body's going to have a hard time making testosterone. The reason why I say for the most part is because your body can also make testosterone using your catecholamines, right? Dopamine or adrenaline. But that's mainly for acute rises in testosterone, not to have prolonged elevated baseline testosterone. You're going to need LH for that, right? In fact, HCG mimics LH, right? They all work through the same pathway, which is pretty much increasing cyclic AMP levels in the cells, which leads to PKA activation, which leads to S-star activation and the entry of free cholesterol into the mitochondria to be converted to Pregnenolone and then Progesterone and then dihydroepiandrosterone or androstenedione and then eventually testosterone. So LH is the master under GnRH that kickstarts this whole process. LH also tells you a lot of information about if the hormones are actually activating the receptors. Because remember, it doesn't matter how many hormones you have. It doesn't matter what the hormone levels are. You could have high testosterone. But if your androgen receptor is fucked, over 90% of the effects of testosterone get negated, right? Because most of the effects of testosterone are through binding to the receptor. It has some other effects outside of the androgen receptor, but for the most part, most of the effects of your hormones are through the receptors. And if your receptors are trash, or to be specific, your estradiol receptor, your LH will give you a hint. For example, estradiol is what goes to the brain and tells the brain to stop producing LH. Obviously, testosterone and DHT do so as well, but estradiol is a lot more powerful at doing that. So if you have very high LH levels, it's usually a sign that either your testicles are not responding to LH to produce testosterone or that your estrogen levels are too low, right? Because if your estrogen levels were high, then your LH will be low. Right? Anyway, I'm going to put LH at fucking amazing. Only reason why it's not higher is because it does not directly affect all the 5 things that make up the criteria. It does it indirectly through obviously stimulation of estrogen and testosterone and things like that, all the other stuff. So that's the only reason why it's not higher, is because it does not directly give you those effects. Next, testosterone, big daddy long stroke, as my boy Andre likes to say. You guys know how much I love this molecule. Nobody on planet Earth knows more about testosterone than I do. I know it sounds cocky, but it's not cocky if you could back it up. This is the hormone that I've studied damn near my entire life. That's why I hate when these shit influencers want to give advice on testosterone and just spew nonsense. Because I'm just saying that and I'm like, what the fuck? Nobody has a clue how wrong they are. Right? It's usually the guy who reads a few articles or a few abstracts and thinks he knows what he's talking about. Most people know nothing about testosterone, guys. And you can find this out after just hearing them speak about it for 20 seconds. They either underhype it or overhype it. But long story short, if you watch my channel, you already know testosterone is one of the most important hormones in the male body. It's not even close. Every single relevant pathway is affected by testosterone. Your muscle, your strength, your energy, your motivation, your aggression, your cognition, your immune system, your recovery, your sexual function, your vascular function, your heart health, your lung health, your bone density, everything you could think about that's relevant to performance and reproduction and whatever is under the control of testosterone. And it's metabolized, of course. It's conversion to DHT and estrogen. So when anyone comes to you and tells you, testosterone is overrated, testosterone is not that important, tell them to suck your dick under a sunny sky. I can't stand misinformation. I can't stand idiots. But anyway, guys, testosterone is what I call the hormone of God. This hormone single-handedly shaped human history as we know it. I can't wait till I have more time so I could tell you guys all of the wonders and beauty of this hormone. Without testosterone, the entire human race goes extinct. I'm going to put it in I'm about to nut category. And the only reason I'm not putting it above insulin is obviously because without insulin, we die. Whereas without testosterone, you'll eventually die, but it's going to take a lot longer, right? If men took their testosterone levels more seriously, again, through fixing their diet, their sleep, their lifestyle, their stress management, their sunlight exposure, their exposure to women and their sexual activity, all those things, right? We will have such a much better world. The world is surrounded by pussies, fake men, weak men, victim mindset motherfuckers. I mean, all of the bullshit that we see around the world today, both in politics and around our society, is due to testosterone levels plummeting, guys. Because high testosterone men would not have put up with the bullshit that we're seeing today. The attack on our kids, the attack on the very structure of society, the attack on the boundaries between right and wrong. All of this is due to a deficiency in estrogens, right? Men are bitches now. It's a fact. No one believes in might. No one believes in strength anymore. No one believes in mental toughness anymore. No one believes in accountability anymore. Again, all of the things that testosterone enhances, which is work ethic, self-accountability, responsibility, motivation to be great, motivation to protect your loved ones, all of those things are being slowly erased from our societies because testosterone is plummeting. Masculinity is dying because the hormone of masculinity is slowly going down the drain. The powers that be want to control us through what? Controlling our testosterone levels. Because they're smart. They know that if they control the testosterone production of men, they thereby control the masculinity of men. And now there's no one left to oppose them. So, again, that's the topic for a different video because I don't want to get too political, but whatever. Next, Pregnenolone. Another very underrated hormone that has many effects on the body, believe it or not, even outside of its conversion to testosterone. But I'm only going to put it at okay simply because the vast majority of pregnenolone's effects are due to its conversion to the downstream hormones such as progesterone, DHEA, testosterone, DHT, all that stuff, right? So pregnenolone is important because, again, without pregnenolone, you're not making none of these hormones up there. But the reason why I'm putting it low on the list is because pregnenolone also means very little if it doesn't convert to these hormones. So again, it's a powerful precursor hormone. It also has its own effects on the body outside of conversion, especially in the brain. But as far as its direct effects on muscle, energy, motivation, all that stuff, I'm going to put it lower because a lot of its effects are indirect, right? It's through conversion. Now, in the brain, it's a bit different, but I could make a whole video about pregnenolone. Same thing with progesterone, right? Just like what I said about pregnenolone. If you're a male, that is. But if you're a male, most of the effects of progesterone, apart from some of the effects that it has on the brain, those are directly through progesterone and its conversion to progesterone metabolites. But most of the effects of progesterone, most of the benefits of progesterone are through conversion to DHEA and ultimately androstenedione and testosterone and stuff like that. So it's a very crucial precursor hormone. But as far as its direct effects, those pale in comparison to the other hormones higher on the list. So I'm going to put it at okay. Now, when it comes to your brain, just like pregnenolone, that's a little different, right? You definitely need progesterone and pregnenolone for optimal brain function. But that's only one criteria out of 5. But that's not the majority of the criteria on this list. Next, prolactin, another misunderstood hormone, right? Obviously, again, it's released by the pituitary gland under the command of, you guessed it, the hypothalamus, right? The hypothalamus releases TRH, thyroid hormone releasing hormone. Yes, the same hormone that releases thyroid hormone is also the hormone that commands the pituitary gland to release prolactin. And prolactin goes on to the various tissues of the body to exert its functions. Now, you need prolactin to live, right? Prolactin gets a really bad rep, but that's only if it's in excess amounts. Remember, inverted U curve. You don't want anything too low. You don't want anything too high. If your prolactin was too low, your life would be miserable. You'll have a hard time enjoying pleasure, enjoying fun, feeling satisfied. In fact, most of the positive effects of serotonin is through upregulation of prolactin, right? So you need prolactin mostly to be satisfied in life. You don't want it to be too high because now it has negative effects on the production of dopamine and testosterone and the signaling of many other hormones. But you do not want it to be too low, right? The no-fap semen retention movement has demonized prolactin so much that everyone thinks that, oh, prolactin is the enemy. That's like thinking cortisol is the enemy, right? Yes, they have negative effects, but that's when they're in excess amounts and they're elevated for too long. But acute spikes in prolactin are fine and needed to maintain homeostasis in the body. Now, if prolactin is too elevated, now it's going to obviously shut down testosterone production, which we don't want, right? So the only time I'd be worried is if your prolactin levels are too high, right? And obviously too low. If they're within range, don't freak out. Now, another reason you don't want prolactin levels too high, because that's also a sign that your dopamine levels are too low, right? Because one of dopamine's main functions is to inhibit prolactin. In fact, dopamine used to be called prolactin inhibiting hormone for a reason. So your prolactin levels tell you a lot about not just the hormonal balance of your body, but the neurotransmitter balance of your body, right? Also, keep in mind that without prolactin, your testosterone levels will keep rising infinitely after sex, which is another reason why we have a refractory period. Prolactin plays a huge role in the refractory period. Else, you would just keep clapping cheeks or beating your meat forever. Without prolactin, your sex drive will constantly go up as your testosterone levels increase as a result of visual stimuli or physical stimuli through sex, right? So we need prolactin to get that post-nut clarity moment. We need prolactin to say, hey, you know what? I'm done eating this food. I'm satisfied. I'm about to go to bed. I'm about to go to sleep. You need prolactin to say, hey, testosterone levels don't go up to astronomical levels, which is going to destroy your immune system and eventually kill you, right? Because remember, testosterone suppresses a big portion of the immune system. So prolactin is important for keeping you alive. Homeostasis. Do not demonize it if it's in a healthy range. Now, obviously, I'm going to put it at okay because it does not have direct effects, or I should say powerful direct effects on muscle, energy, and other things that I'm ranking high on this list. It mainly has indirect effects. But if your T levels are low or you feel like shit, you might want to look at your prolactin to see if it's due to low dopamine levels or elevated estradiol or things like that, right? Also, if your estrogen levels are too high, your prolactin will also be too high, right? Dopamine lowers prolactin, estrogen increases prolactin. Next, SHBG, sex-hormone-binding-globulin. Watch my part on free testosterone while I go into the details. Now, obviously, it's not really a hormone. The only reason why I put it here is because it does, if you want to be technical, it does have a receptor. It does influence the body in pathways independent of its role as a transporter, as a hormone transporter. But I'm also putting it here to give emphasis to free testosterone. So once again, you want to test your sex-hormone-binding-globulin levels because not only it shows you if you're insulin resistant or not, right? If your SHBG is too low, that's also a sign of insulin resistance because SHBG is made in the liver. So if your insulin levels are too high and you have too much inflammation in the liver, SHBG production is going to go down. Also, keep in mind that you do not want SHBG too low because I see a lot of people are thinking, oh, because low SHBG means higher free testosterone, let me lower SHBG to 0. Once again, inverted U curve. You want to lower SHBG, but only for it to be somewhere within the range. You don't want it to be lower than what it's supposed to be because then, yes, you're going to have temporarily high free testosterone levels, But free testosterone is going to be so high that eventually it's going to reduce total testosterone and DHEA and other androgens. You don't want that. You need SHBG to keep the balance between total testosterone and free testosterone. You also need SHBG to carry these motherfucking hormones to their destination faster, since they have a hard time moving through blood. Because again, like I mentioned earlier, they're fat soluble, not water soluble. SHBG is the bus. It's the carrier that carries your crucial fat soluble hormones such as testosterone and DHT to their destination. Also, like I said earlier, SHBG is what stops your brain from being overloaded with too much testosterone and eventually estradiol, which obviously is going to lead to lower luteinizing hormone, which we also don't want. And again, all of this is in addition of its effects on insulin sensitivity. Also keep in mind that SHBG is what keeps testosterone from being degraded too fast in the body, right? So you want a decent amount of SHBG to actually keep testosterone from being broken down too fast. So contrary to what you've been told, if you're healthy, higher SHBG levels usually lead to higher total testosterone levels. It's only when SHBG is too high that you start to experience issues. Because now, yeah, you're going to end up with high total testosterone, but then your free T is going to be too low. So again, inverted motherfucking U curve. You guys are going to hear this every time in my videos. So where does it rank? Fucking amazing, because it gives you so much information about your body. Now, it doesn't directly increase muscle and energy and motivation and sexual function and all that, right? But it indirectly does. So that's the only reason why I'm putting it lower. Next, T3. To be specific, triiodothyronine. Triiodol because it's 3-iodine instead of 4 for T4. But anyway, T3. How is it produced? Once again, your hypothalamus releases TRH, which is thyrotropin releasing hormone, which then goes on to your pituitary gland and commands it to release TSH, right, which is thyroid stimulating hormone. TSH then goes to your thyroid gland and causes it to release T4, which eventually converts to T3, right? So T3 is the more active form of T4, right? Now, what does T3 do? To be specific, free T3, right? Because eventually, just like testosterone binds to SHBG, T3 also binds to its carrier protein. So obviously, it's free T3 that does most of its effects on the body. But anyway, what does T3 do? Guys, your thyroid hormones control goddamn near everything. Your metabolism, your muscle function, your energy levels, your brain function, your recovery, your immune system, every part of your body is affected both directly and indirectly by your thyroid hormones. Even the production of testosterone, even the production of DHT, because thyroid hormones obviously regulate 5-alpha reductase. T3 is king. I'm going to put it right there, even in front of testosterone, right? Because if your thyroid levels go too low, eventually your testosterone levels will plummet. Thyroid hormones is how your body senses if it should spend energy into reproduction and growth instead of survival, right? Very similar to leptin. It's a co-master regulator of your entire body. If you eat like shit, you sleep like shit, or you're under too much stress, your body's going to lower thyroid production because once again, now it's time to focus on survival, not reproduction. So your energy will suffer, your muscle mass will suffer, your immune function will suffer. Thyroid hormones are so underrated. Next, T4. Now again, the only reason I'm not putting T4 next to T3 is because most of the effects of thyroid hormones are through conversion of T4 to T3 and eventually obviously free T3 once it's removed from its binding protein. But it's still important because obviously your body cannot effectively make T3 without T4. So T4 is important because it actually shows you if your thyroid gland is working, if your thyroid gland is responsive to TSH. The only reason I'm not putting it higher on the list is because, again, if your T4 is high but your T3 is low, then that kind of defeats the purpose, right? You want T4 to convert to T3. So I'm going to put T4 at fucking amazing. Same goes for free T4. Watch the part about T3 to really see the importance of thyroid hormone. Also keep in mind that your thyroid hormones work as transcription factors. So a lot of your genes are not going to be transcribed regardless of your genetics if your thyroid function is too low. Next, TSH. Again, as mentioned earlier, TSH is produced by the pituitary gland downstream of TRH, which stands for thyrotropin releasing hormone, released by the hypothalamus. TSH then goes on to your thyroid gland and orders it to produce T4, which eventually converts to T3 and speeds up your metabolism, transcribes genes, and allows for the production of testosterone, DHT, a lot of other hormones in the body, and regulates your overall metabolism. But again, TSH is similar to LH, right? It's the hormone that tells your body to produce thyroid hormone. So I'm going to put that in fucking amazing. Not going to put it higher simply because it doesn't directly influence muscle, energy, motivation, all that stuff. It indirectly does it through the conversion of T4 and eventually T3. So that's the only reason why it's in fucking amazing and not high. Also, the importance of testing for TSH is because it tells you if the T3 and the free T3 is actually entering the cells and doing its job. Because if T3 is not doing its job, meaning let's say you have high T3 but symptoms of hypothyroidism, one way you're going to know is if your TSH is high. Because if your TSH is high, then that means your body's not producing enough T3 to go back to the brain and do negative feedback, right? Because TSH tells your body to make T3. T3 then goes on to your brain and tells it to stop making TSH. So if you see elevated TSH levels, I don't care how high your T3 and T4 levels are, something is wrong. Just like if you see very high LH levels, usually something is wrong with either testosterone or estradiol functioning. All right, next, last but not least, vitamin D, which everyone thinks is a vitamin when it's really a hormone. Watch my video on sunlight that I made years ago before people finally caught up to the importance of getting daily sunlight exposure. But long story short, vitamin D, which is really a hormone, again called calcitriol, is incredibly important for muscle mass, energy levels, brain function, motivation, recovery, sexual function. It is pretty much upstream of almost every hormone on this list. Vitamin D is so important as a hormone that it led to the entire creation of quote unquote a race, right? White people, think about it, guys. White people exist because of vitamin D, right? Again, if you watch my video on sunlight, I go into the nerdy details. But sunlight is so important that humans had to evolve whiter skin when they went up north, away from the equator, away from Africa. Think about that for a second. That is the importance of vitamin D. It's not just for bone. It's not just for calcium entry into the cells. It has so many other roles, even in the production of testosterone and all the other more popular hormones. Almost every important organ and cell in your body has vitamin D receptors, right? If your vitamin D levels are too low, which is most black people outside of Africa, north of the equator, so in Europe, in North America, or people with pale skin but who put too many layers on or don't go outside as much, your body is going to suffer. You will never be at peak performance unless your vitamin D levels are in a healthy range, ideally in the optimal range, of course, right? It's one of the most underrated hormones in the body. And obviously it goes in I'm about to nut category. So quick summary, hormones are extremely important. You should test them frequently to see trends in your health, trends in the state of your body, not just a one-time snapshot, but overall progression. Ideally, you want them to stay at an ideal range. You want them to slightly trend up, or worst case scenario, stay flat. You do not want to see a negative trend in the state of your hormones. Obviously, reverse it for the negative hormones, right? You don't want them to trend up over time. But here's a bonus. Here are 3 ways. He actually forgot to include those, but there are 3 ways you guys can know if all of these hormones are optimized without spending a boatload of money to companies who take advantage of your desire to improve your health. I'm so upset that it costs so much money for people to check the status of their health, right? Think about it for a second. Why does it cost hundreds and hundreds of dollars just to see if you're healthy? Because the medical industry wants you to be sick because now there's more money in their pockets, right? They want you to come when it's too late. They want you to come when it's beyond natural rejuvenation strategies. This way they could sell you overpriced medicine, right? So making it hard for you to test for your hormones is one sneaky way they find a way to take advantage of you, right? Because if you don't test and your hormones go to shit, now most people are going to refuse to obviously fix them naturally. They're going to go to big pharma and they're going to spend thousands of dollars to get it fixed. So it's a shame that it costs so much to test for your hormones, which is where I come in. Guys, 3 ways to know if your hormones are in balance is simple. Number 1, check your blood pressure regularly. It's very cheap to test for your blood pressure. 1, you could just buy a device for less than $50. It's going to last you a lifetime. Or you could borrow from somebody else. Or you can go into a college campus or any facility that will allow you to test your blood pressure for free, right? I test my blood pressure every fucking morning because your blood pressure will let you know if something is wrong in your body. It's one of the best canaries in the coal mine. There's a reason why every time you go to the doctor, one of the first things they do is check your blood pressure. So why not buy the device yourself for less than $50, or like I said, borrow from somebody else and test it every morning. Number two, your blood sugar. That is so important. Test your blood glucose frequently. Now, if it's in a normal range, there's no worry. But get into the habit of pricking your goddamn finger. You're not going to feel a thing unless you're a bitch. It doesn't hurt. It's a drop of blood that comes out. It costs less than $20. It's going to last you, once again, years. Think about it, less than $20, and it's going to last years and allow you to check your blood sugar. Because guess what? If your insulin is out of whack, your blood glucose will tell you. If your testosterone is too low, your blood sugar will be elevated. If your cortisol is too high, your blood sugar will be elevated. I mean, your blood sugar tells you so much about the state of your body, right? If your DHT is too low, your blood glucose is going to be elevated, because DHT and DHEA are extremely powerful at making your cells sensitive to insulin. So it takes less than 20 seconds, maybe 30 seconds max, to test your blood sugar. It takes less than 30 seconds to test your blood pressure. And that will give you so much information about the state of your body. And it won't cost you hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And last but not least, watch my video on dynamometers, testing your grip strength. If there's one thing you can do to know if your overall hormonal balance is in check, is to test your grip strength frequently. I know it sounds crazy. I know you're thinking, well, can I just train my grip strength and it's gonna go up? Or don't bigger people have? Watch the video that I already did on grip strength, read the article on it. Even if you account for all of those factors, apart from outliers, of course, your grip strength is one of the best non-invasive, cheap ways to measure your overall androgen status, because it accounts for your androgens, your testosterone, your DHT. It accounts for your adrenal hormones. It accounts for your cortisol, your T to C ratio. Everything is factored into your grip strength. It is so sensitive to changes in your hormones. If you do something that lowers your T levels, you will see it in your grip strength in minutes, not hours, minutes. And if you do something that drastically increases your testosterone levels, you also will notice it in your grip strength in minutes. In some cases, it's in seconds. It is extremely sensitive. I could make another dedicated video to show you guys the nerdy mechanisms that explain why grip strength is such a powerful predictor of testosterone levels and sperm function and all that. But so if you want it, just vote in the next poll. But long story short, if you have a dynamometer, and again, I make no money from this because I could easily put Amazon links and affiliate links and make a ton of money from recommending these things. But once again, I keep my channel free from conflicts of interest. So I am not telling you guys what device I use, what brand it is. I'm not using the Amazon link. This way you know that I have zero conflicts of interest. Go out there, get a cheap dynamometer. They're less than $30. And once again, they're going to last you a lifetime. Or the free alternative is borrow it from somebody else or use your scale at home. But when you total up the cost of the dynamometer, the blood pressure monitor, and the finger pricking blood glucose thing, guys, it's less than $100. And again, it's gonna last you for so long, and it's gonna give you much better information than actually doing the blood work. Again, if you can afford the blood work, do it. But those three things I just listed give you much more information, because it doesn't matter what your hormones look like on paper. All that matters is, are those hormones activating their receptors, and are they giving the intended result? Are they giving you the correct signs and symptoms, right? And that's what those three things measure: your blood pressure, your blood sugar, and your grip strength, right? Those three things go in I'm about to nut category, even though they're not hormones, of course. But you get the point. Because remember, it's not about testosterone. It's about net androgen status, which is the balance between your androgens and your anti-androgens. That's it, guys. Big shout out again to Up for making this tier list, which saves me a ton of time, because all I gotta do is just hit record and start doing what I do best. Join the Instagram, join the Discord for those who want to volunteer and help in the production of those videos, such as creating tier lists and helping with edits and making shorts and all that stuff. Join the Discord, and I'm going to add you guys to the volunteer group. And for those who want to support the channel financially, go to the website and grab a copy of the ebook, which once again does not have information that you cannot get for free on my videos, articles, Reddit, Discord, and Instagram. That's just for people who want to support the channel, since I refuse to open a Patreon. All right, guys, go out there and dominate your life. Say fuck you to Big Pharma. Take control of your life. Know how your body works. Know your hormones. And do what is necessary to keep your body healthy. You owe it to yourself. All right, I'm out of here. All right, guys, don't forget to like or share the video, subscribe and hit the bell, and buy my HSP Nucleus Overload Training Program. It's the ultimate program for maximum muscle growth. It includes full body workout splits, bro splits, push-pull, home workouts, you name it. Also comes with a complete guide for macros, nutrition, fat loss, muscle growth, hormones, including a meal plan. It's pretty much all my 16 years of experience condensed into one fucking book. You're also going to get free copies of any future edition. So visit team3dalpha.com and you can use the 40% off coupon code Nucleus Overload. Or you could just buy the shit at full price. Alright guys, I'm out of here.